The sun bled crimson across the Montana sky as Tabitha Evans stared down the barrel of her father's Winchester rifle, her knuckles white against the polished wood. The year was 1878, and at 20 years old, she had never imagined she'd be defending her family's ranch against the most notorious outlaw in the territory, the man who now lay wounded at her feet, his blood seeping into the dusty floorboards of their porch. "Give me one reason why I shouldn't pull this trigger right now," Tabitha demanded, her voice steadier than her racing heart. Zeke Emerson looked up at her through a curtain of dark hair, his blue eyes startlingly clear despite the bullet wound in his shoulder. "Because, Miss Evans, if you kill me, you'll never know where Hayes hid the deed to your land." Hayes Thornton, the banker who'd been squeezing ranchers out of Willow Creek for years. The same man who'd threatened to foreclose on their ranch after her father's death 3 months ago. The same man who'd offered her a generous arrangement that made her skin crawl every time she thought about it. "You're lying," she said, but didn't pull the trigger. The outlaw they called the Ghost Rider managed a pained smile. "Would I ride through a storm with a bullet in me just to lie to a pretty girl with a rifle?" Tabitha hesitated, and in that moment, her life changed forever. By dawn, she had bandaged his wound, learned the truth about Hayes Thornton's scheme to steal her land, and made a decision that would scandalize the entire town. She needed Zeke Emerson, the very man who had terrorized the territory for years, to help her save her ranch. And he needed her to help clear his name. "They'll never believe you're innocent," she said, passing him a cup of coffee as the morning light filtered through the kitchen windows. "Half the territory thinks you've killed a dozen men." "That's the funny thing about rumors," Zeke said, wincing as he shifted in the wooden chair. "I've robbed stagecoaches and stolen from the railroad, but I've never killed a man who wasn't trying to kill me first. Why should I believe you?" Tabitha challenged. "Same reason you didn't shoot me last night," he replied, eyes fixed on hers. "You know there's more to this story than what you've been told." 3 days later, when Tabitha rode into town with Zeke Emerson by her side, whispers spread faster than wildfire. She kept her chin high as they dismounted in front of the general store, ignoring the gaping stares and hurried movements of mothers pulling their children inside. Tabitha Evans, the shrill voice, belonged to Mrs. Pearson, the preacher's wife, who stood frozen on the boardwalk with a basket of goods clutched to her chest. "Have you lost your senses, girl? Do you know who that is?" "I know exactly who he is, Mrs. Pearson," Tabitha replied calmly. "And I know what he isn't, which is what this town has been led to believe." Sheriff Miller emerged from his office, hand hovering over his holster. "Miss Evans, step away from him. Emerson, you're under arrest for robbery and murder." "He hasn't murdered anyone," Tabitha said, positioning herself between Zeke and the sheriff. "And he has information about Hayes Thornton that you need to hear." "Hayes Thornton is a respected businessman," Sheriff Miller replied, though his eyes betrayed uncertainty. "Emerson is a wanted criminal." "A criminal who saved my life," she countered. "And who knows the truth about the land deeds that have mysteriously disappeared from all over the county." As a crowd gathered, Tabitha felt the weight of their judgment. She'd been the town's darling since childhood, the schoolteacher's daughter who'd taken over her father's ranch after his passing, refusing numerous suitors to maintain her independence. And now, in their eyes, she'd betrayed them all by siding with an outlaw. Tabitha, Mary Gaines, her oldest friend, pushed through the crowd, her voice low and urgent. "What are you doing? Your father would be ashamed." The words stung, but Tabitha stood firm. "My father taught me to look for truth, Mary. And the truth is that Hayes Thornton has been stealing from all of us, using the law as his weapon." Zeke stepped forward, hands raised in a peaceful gesture. "Sheriff, I'm not here to cause trouble. I'm here to set things right. By bringing an outlaw to our town." Hayes Thornton himself appeared, immaculately dressed as always, his silver watch chain gleaming in the sunlight. "Miss Evans, I had hoped to help you through this difficult time, but I see you've chosen differently." Tabitha met his gaze unflinchingly. "I've chosen the truth, Mr. Thornton, even if it comes from an unexpected source." Sheriff Miller looked conflicted. 2 hours, Miss Evans. You and Emerson have 2 hours to present whatever evidence you claim to have. Then I'm locking him up until a judge arrives." As they walked toward the sheriff's office, Tabitha felt Zeke's hand brush against hers briefly. "You didn't have to do that," he murmured. standing up for me in front of the whole town. Someone had to, she replied. Besides, we made a deal. What she didn't say was how her heart had begun racing for reasons that had nothing to do with fear when he touched her hand. Over the next few days, Willow Creek was turned upside down. With the reluctant help of Sheriff Miller, Zeke and Tabitha uncovered Hayes Thornton's elaborate scheme. The banker had been falsifying mortgage documents, manipulating property boundaries, and using his position to acquire vast tracts of land that would soon be worth a fortune when the railroad extended its line through the territory. While Thornton was placed under guard in the town jail, Tabitha found herself defending her alliance with Zeke at every turn. He's still an outlaw, Mary reminded her as they stood outside the church after Sunday service. Even if he helped expose Thornton. People can change, Tabitha argued. And not everyone is what they appear to be. Your reputation is in tatters, Mary hissed. The widow Johnson is saying you've let him stay at your ranch unchaperoned. Is it true? Tabitha flushed. He's been sleeping in the barn. And frankly, Mary, I don't care what people are saying. Without Zeke, we'd all still be at Thornton's mercy. They're saying you're sweet on him. Mary continued, her expression somewhere between concern and fascination. Tell me that's not true, at least. Tabitha couldn't answer, because the truth was, she wasn't sure anymore. Zeke Emerson was unlike any man she'd ever known. He was dangerous. Yes, she'd seen the way he handled a gun, the way his eyes constantly scanned horizons and doorways. But he was also gentle when he thought no one was watching, like when he'd helped Mrs. Tanner with her broken wagon wheel, or when he'd taught Tabitha's younger brother Timothy how to track animals in the forest. And he looked at her in a way that made her forget to breathe. Your silence speaks volumes, Mary sighed. They said you shouldn't choose him, Tabitha. The whole town is saying it. That evening, as the sunset painted the mountains in shades of purple and gold, Tabitha found Zeke by the corral, watching as her horses grazed in the distance. The sheriff tells me the judge will be here next week, she said, coming to stand beside him. He says with your help in exposing Thornton, plus the testimonies from Pine Ridge about the real killer who was using your name, you might get a reduced sentence. Zeke nodded, his profile sharp against the darkening sky. 3 years, maybe less. Better than hanging. I wrote to the governor, Tabitha admitted, explaining everything you've done. He turned to her then, surprise evident in his features. Why would you do that? Because you deserve a second chance, she said simply. Everyone does. His hand found hers, rough calluses against her work-hardened skin. Tabitha. When this is over, I should leave. You know that, right? This town will never accept me, and they'll never forgive you if what? She challenged, hard hammering. Instead of answering, he released her hand and turned back to the horizon. You've got a good life here. A respectable life. I won't be the reason you lose that. Respectable? Tabitha laughed without humor. Zeke, I lost respectable the moment I didn't shoot you on my porch. And do you know something? I don't miss it. The tension between them had been building for days in shared glances across the dinner table, in the brush of shoulders as they worked side by side to gather evidence against Thornton, in the late-night conversations where they'd revealed pieces of themselves neither had shared before. They're all telling me I shouldn't choose you, she said softly, stepping closer. That you're wrong for me in every possible way. Zeke's eyes darkened, his voice dropping to a near whisper. They're probably right. Then let me be wrong, Tabitha replied, reaching up to touch his face. I'd rather be wrong with you than right with anyone else. For a moment, he remained perfectly still. Then, with a groan that seemed torn from somewhere deep inside him, Zeke pulled her into his arms and kissed her. It wasn't gentle or hesitant. It was a kiss born of weeks of restraint and years of loneliness. And Tabitha responded with equal fervor, twining her arms around his neck as the last light faded from the sky. When they finally broke apart, breathless and trembling, she rested her forehead against his chest, listening to the rapid beat of his heart. I'll ruin you, he whispered into her hair. Or maybe I'll save you, she countered. The trial of Hayes Thornton revealed corruption that extended far beyond Willow Creek. The banker had connections to land speculators in Denver and St. Louis who had been systematically defrauding settlers throughout the territory. As promised, Zeke's testimony was crucial, and the judge impressed by his cooperation and the letters from Tabitha, and, surprisingly, Sheriff Miller sentenced him to just 1 year in the territorial prison, with the possibility of early release for good behavior. The night before Zeke was to leave with the U.S. Marshal, Tabitha found him sitting on her porch steps, staring up at the stars that blanketed the Montana sky. "A year isn't so long," she said, settling beside him. "Long enough for you to come to your senses," he replied, but there was a smile in his voice. She took his hand, lacing her fingers through his. "I thought I might visit you. Every month, if they'll allow it." Zeke turned to her, his expression serious in the moonlight. "Tabitha, listen to me. I want you to promise me something. If, while I'm gone, you meet someone else, someone respectable, who can give you the life you deserve, don't wait for me." "I'm not promising any such thing," she said firmly. "I have nothing to offer you," he insisted. "No land, no money, just a reputation that will follow me wherever I go." "You have you," Tabitha said. "That's all I want." He kissed her then, gently this time, as if memorizing the feel of her lips against his. The following morning, as the marshal's wagon prepared to depart, Tabitha stood on the boardwalk outside the sheriff's office, ignoring the stares and whispers of the townspeople gathered to witness the departure. Mary approached hesitantly, stopping beside her. "You really love him, don't you?" "I do," Tabitha admitted, watching as Zeke spoke with Sheriff Miller. "Then I suppose I should apologize," Mary said, surprising her, "for not standing by you when you needed a friend." Tabitha turned to her, seeing genuine regret in her eyes. "It's not too late. They said I shouldn't choose you," she said to Zeke moments later, as he stood before her, wrists shackled for the journey. He smiled, that crooked half-smile that never failed to make her heart flutter. "Then let me be the wrong choice." The marshal cleared his throat impatiently, but Zeke ignored him, pressing his forehead against Tabitha's. "1 year. Wait for me. As long as it takes," she promised. True to her word, Tabitha visited the territorial prison in Helena every month. She brought news of the town, of Timothy's progress in school, of the ranch she was managing successfully on her own despite the initial reluctance of neighboring ranchers to deal with Emerson's woman. And she brought letters, dozens of them, from people whose land and livelihoods had been restored after Thornton's arrest. Even Sheriff Miller wrote, acknowledging that Zeke had shown a character few men possess when faced with similar circumstances. 8 months into his sentence, on a crisp autumn day, Tabitha arrived for her usual visit to find the warden waiting for her. "Miss Evans," he said, tipping his hat, "I have some news for you. Mr. Emerson is being released today. The governor has commuted his sentence based on his exemplary behavior and the continued testimonials regarding his assistance in the Thornton case." Tabitha's heart soared. "Today? He's leaving today. As soon as the paperwork is processed," the warden confirmed. "About an hour, I'd estimate." 63 minutes later, Zeke Emerson walked through the prison gates, stopping short when he saw Tabitha waiting with their horses. "I had a whole speech planned," he said as he approached her, "about how I was going to work hard and prove myself worthy of you before I came back. And now," she asked, her smile as bright as the autumn sun, "now I'm thinking maybe we can figure it out together." They rode back to Willow Creek side by side, talking of plans and possibilities. Zeke had ideas about breeding horses, something he'd learned from his father before everything went wrong in his life. Tabitha spoke of expanding the ranch, perhaps adding cattle to their operations. "It won't be easy," she acknowledged. "Some people will never accept you except us." "Do you care?" he asked. She considered this, then smiled. "No, not anymore." The town had changed in Zeke's absence. Hayes Thornton's arrest had led to investigations across the territory, and many of Willow Creek's citizens had recovered property they thought lost forever. The new bank manager, Mr. Lewis, was a fair man who had helped reorganize the town's finances. And Sheriff Miller, to everyone's surprise, had become an unlikely ally. Still, when Zeke and Tabitha rode down Main Street together that first day, conversations halted and stares followed them. But there were also nods of acknowledgement, and even a few welcoming smiles. "Miss Evans, Mr. Emerson," Mrs. Tanner called from outside her store, waving them over. "I was hoping you'd return today. I have something for you." Inside her shop, the elderly widow presented them with a handmade quilt, its intricate pattern depicting mountains and valleys in shades of blue and green. "Every new couple needs a proper wedding quilt," she said matter-of-factly. That is, if you two are planning what everyone assumes you're planning. Tabitha blushed crimson, but Zeke laughed, a full, genuine laugh that transformed his face. We haven't discussed it yet, Mrs. Tanner, but I appreciate your confidence in us. That night, under a sky full of stars, Zeke took Tabitha's hand as they walked along the creek that bordered her property. I've been thinking, he said carefully, about what Mrs. Tanner said. Tabitha's heart skipped. About the quilt. About what the quilt represents, he corrected, stopping to face her. Tabitha, I've spent most of my life running from something or toward something, never staying in one place long enough to call it home. But these past months, even from a prison cell, I've had something I've never had before. What's that? She asked softly. Hope, he said simply. Hope for a future, for a life that means something. And it's all because of you. He dropped to one knee, still holding her hand, and Tabitha's eyes widened. I don't have a ring yet, he admitted, but I have a promise. If you'll have me with all my faults and my past, and the challenges that will come with being my wife, I swear, I will spend every day of my life making sure you never regret choosing the wrong man. Tears blurred Tabitha's vision as she pulled him to his feet. Yes, she whispered against his lips. 1,000 times yes. The wedding took place on a bright spring day, with wildflowers carpeting the meadow behind Tabitha's ranch house. To the couple's surprise, most of the town attended, along with ranchers from neighboring properties and even a few of Zeke's former cellmates who had also received early release. Sheriff Miller stood as Zeke's best man, a development that still amused Tabitha whenever she thought about it. Mary, who had finally accepted that her friend's happiness mattered more than societal expectations, served as maid of honor. I still think you're crazy, Mary whispered as they prepared in Tabitha's bedroom. But I've never seen you happier, so maybe there's something to be said for making the wrong choice. When Tabitha walked down the aisle on Timothy's arm, wearing her mother's restored wedding dress and carrying a bouquet of spring wildflowers, she had eyes only for Zeke. He stood tall and proud, clean-shaven in a new suit, his expression a mixture of awe and disbelief as she approached. You look beautiful, he murmured when she reached him. So do you, she replied with a smile. The preacher, who had initially refused to perform the ceremony but had relented after numerous conversations with both Sheriff Miller and his own wife, cleared his throat and began the service. Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today to witness the union of two souls who have found each other against all odds and expectations. Later, as they danced under lantern light with their friends and neighbors, Tabitha rested her head against Zeke's chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. Happy? He asked, his breath warm against her hair. Completely, she answered. You? More than I ever thought possible. He twirled her gently, then pulled her close again. You know, there will still be people who say you made the wrong choice. Tabitha looked up at him, at the man who had risked everything to help her save her home, who had faced his past and chosen a different future, who looked at her as if she were the most precious thing in the world. Then let them talk, she said, because I know the truth. Over the years that followed, the Emerson ranch flourished. Zeke's talent with horses proved lucrative, and Tabitha's business sense helped them expand their operations. They built a larger house to accommodate their growing family, first a daughter with Tabitha's auburn hair and Zeke's blue eyes, then twin boys who inherited their father's mischievous streak. The town of Willow Creek grew as well, becoming an important stop when the railroad finally came through. And while there were always a few who remembered Zeke's outlaw past, most came to know him as a respected rancher, a fair employer, and a devoted husband and father. On their 10th anniversary, as they sat on their porch watching their children play in the yard, Zeke took Tabitha's hand and brought it to his lips. Do you ever wonder what might have happened if you'd shot me that night? He asked, only half joking. Sometimes, she admitted. But then I look around at everything we've built together, and I'm grateful I was such a poor shot. He laughed, drawing her close. You were an excellent shot. You just chose not to pull the trigger. Best decision I ever made, Tabitha said, leaning into his embrace. Choosing you when everyone said I shouldn't. And here I was, thinking my best line ever was offering to be your wrong choice, Zeke teased. As the sun set over the mountains that had witnessed their unlikely love story, Tabitha and Zeke Emerson remained on their porch, surrounded by the life they had created together, a testament to the power of second chances, of looking beyond appearances, and of having the courage to choose love, even when it seemed like the wrong choice to everyone else. In the distance, a train whistle announced the arrival of progress, but on the Emerson ranch, time moved at its own pace, marked by seasons and birthdays, anniversaries and quiet moments like this one. A man and woman who had defied expectations, healed each other's wounds, and found in each other the home they had both been searching for. "I love you, Tabitha Emerson," Zeke said softly. "And I love you," she replied. "My perfectly wrong choice."